Throughout history, nearly every civilization has told the same impossible story. Stories of something larger than us, stronger than us, not quite human, but not quite myth either. Giants. Not the fairy tale kind, not storybook monsters, but towering figures said to have walked beside us, hunted us, and in some cases, ruled over us. What's strange is how often these stories appear in places that never had contact with one another. Different continents, different languages, different centuries, and yet, the descriptions are almost identical. Massive bones, red hair, enormous footprints, entire communities too frightened to speak about what they'd seen. So tonight, join me as we explore 5 of the most chilling alleged encounters with giants in recorded history. From ancient texts, to buried skeletons, to a modern military incident that some claim was quietly erased. Because if even one of these stories is true, then perhaps humanity was never alone at the top of the food chain. Long before modern archaeology, long before newspapers, long before recorded history as we know it, some of the earliest written texts in existence were already describing giants. In ancient Hebrew scripture, there is a brief but unsettling reference to beings known as the Nephilim. The word is often translated as the fallen ones. They are described not as ordinary people, but as beings of immense size and strength. Some translations simply call them giants. Others describe them as mighty warriors, men of great stature and renown, who lived in a time before the world we recognize today. What's especially strange is how casually they're mentioned. Not like fantasy, not like myth, but almost like fact, as though the writers assumed everyone already knew what they were. And it isn't just one culture. Ancient Mesopotamian texts speak of towering demigods. Greek mythology tells of titans. Norse legends describe the Jotnar, civilizations separated by oceans, all telling the same story, of a time when humanity shared the world with something bigger. Of course, historians often dismiss these accounts as symbolism or exaggeration, but others wonder when the same idea appears again and again and again. Could these ancient writers have been describing something they truly believed they had seen? Not gods, not monsters, but flesh and blood beings who simply didn't fit into our understanding of history. Centuries later, in the Nevada desert, those old stories would take on new life. The Paiute people told of a violent tribe known as the Si-Te-Ka. They described them as tall, broad, and incredibly strong. But what made them truly disturbing was their hair, bright red. According to legend, these giants were cannibals. They raided villages at night, stealing food, and sometimes people. For years, the Paiute avoided them, until finally, they decided to fight back. The tribe tracked the giants to Lovelock Cave in northwestern Nevada. They sealed the entrance and lit massive fires at its mouth. Smoke filled the cave. Anyone who tried to escape was forced back inside with arrows and spears. By morning, the threat was gone, or so the story goes. But in the early 1900s, miners excavating that same cave made some unsettling discoveries. Oversized sandals, massive tools, and human remains that seemed far larger than normal. Some accounts even mentioned preserved tufts of reddish hair. Many of these artifacts were reportedly collected, cataloged, and then quietly disappeared. Not long after, across the Atlantic, another discovery raised eyebrows. In the late 1800s, a French archaeologist named Georges Vacher de la Pouge uncovered several unusually large human bones while excavating a burial mound near Castelnau. One femur alone was far too large to belong to an average person. When measured proportionally, the individual would have stood over 11 feet tall. The bones were presented to a scientific society, documented, studied, and then they vanished from the record. No preserved specimens, No modern analysis, only sketches, and written reports describing a skeleton that simply shouldn't have existed. By the early 1900s, similar claims began surfacing in the United States. This time, on Catalina Island, off the coast of California. Newspapers reported that archaeologists had uncovered several unusually tall skeletons during excavations, some allegedly between 7 and 9 feet tall. Others described strange features, including double rows of teeth and elongated skulls. But perhaps the most controversial detail was where those remains were sent. According to multiple local accounts, many were shipped to the Smithsonian Institution for further study, and after that, they were never publicly displayed again. Over time, accusations began to grow. Some claimed the discoveries had simply been misplaced. Others believed the bones were misidentified. And then there were those who suspected something else entirely. That evidence of unusually large human skeletons was being quietly stored away, or discarded, to avoid rewriting parts of history. The Smithsonian has repeatedly denied any cover-up. But when artifacts vanish, questions tend to linger. And then, there's one final account. Not from centuries ago. Not from dusty excavation sites. But from modern warfare. In 2002, deep in the mountains near Kandahar, Afghanistan, a small U.S. military unit reportedly went missing during patrol. A second squad was sent to investigate. What they allegedly found sounds less like a military report and more like something out of a nightmare. Near the mouth of a cave, they discovered the remains of their comrades. That's when it appeared. A massive figure. Some estimates place it at 15 feet tall. Long red hair, 6 fingers on each hand, carrying a crude spear. Before the soldiers could react, it charged. One man was reportedly killed instantly. The rest opened fire. Witnesses claim it took sustained gunfire to bring the creature down. The body was then airlifted away by helicopter, and those involved were ordered never to speak of what happened. Officially, the military denies the story. No reports, no records, no acknowledgement. But the witnesses who have come forward insist they didn't fight a man, they fought something else. Something far too large to be human. So what do we make of all this? Ancient texts describing giants, tribal legends of red-haired cannibals, massive bones that disappear from museums, and modern soldiers telling stories they were never meant to share. Individually, each could be dismissed. Coincidence, mistaken identity, exaggeration. But together, they paint an uncomfortable picture. Because when the same story survives for thousands of years, across cultures that never met, it makes you wonder. Maybe giants aren't just myths. Maybe they're memories, distorted by time, but rooted in something real. And maybe, whatever they were, we're lucky they're gone. Or at least, we hope they are. If you enjoyed tonight's exploration, let me know which story unsettled you the most down in the comments. And if you'd like to see more mysteries, lost history, and unexplained encounters, be sure to subscribe. Because there are still many things in this world that don't quite fit the history books, and we're only just getting started.